Hi, everybody, and welcome to Context Countdown. I'm Andrew Korupko, and I'll be going over 5 recent news stories that need to be placed in context. Some of them are misleading, while others are spot on. But either way, there's a context behind them, and I'm here to tell you what's really going on. Let's take a look at our top 5 countdown for the week. At number 5, we have Chad and Niger taking the war on Boko Haram to its home turf, intervening in northeast Nigeria in an attempt to eradicate the terrorist group once and for all. Now, what we have here is very, very symbolic because we see that non-Western states are able to forcefully fight against terrorism without the help of the West. And everybody knows about Boko Haram. They're the group that's been killing people for quite a few years. They kidnapped all those poor girls in Nigeria last year. They're just absolutely horrible. But here we go. The narrative has been flipped to where, as bad as they are, they're still able to be defeated by these West African militaries with no American support whatsoever. The so-called anti-ISIL coalition in the Mideast isn't present in Western Africa. Yet what you have here is a regional grouping, regionally organized, that is working amongst itself and coordinating its policies and its offensives in order to push the terrorists back. Doesn't need Washington telling them what to do. In fact, they're doing it on their own. And it's just showing a new type of hope for what can happen throughout the world, not just in Western Africa. We can even look at North Africa. Right now, we have Egyptian President al-Sisi talking about creating an Arab intervention force for use against terrorists. Now, that might take a bit of a different form than what we have in West Africa, but the idea is the same. Regional problems, regional solutions, and without saying it, keep the United States out. Sometimes the U.S. does more harm than good. Now, to be fair, the U.S. is in Chad helping some of the militaries with a training exercise called Operation Flintlock. But they're not on the front lines, no advisors, not dropping any bombs. This is entirely an African initiative by Africans, for Africans, to save Africans, and I give a lot of credit to these countries for making it happen. Now, what else you have? You also have Cameroon and Nigeria itself also involved, and I'd like to remind everyone as well, this operation is going on with the full approval of Nigeria's authorities. There's no talk of bombing Nigeria or intervening in Nigeria without its government's permission, like kind of what's happening in Syria right now. And it's pretty interesting because the Syrian government, I like to always remind everybody, is 120% more legitimate than many other governments because you look at the popularity rating. 88.7% of the people voted for President Bashar Assad to continue to lead the country. Didn't have that with Goodluck Jonathan. Now, they're not saying he's illegitimate, but facts are the facts. A country like Syria with such a high approval rating for its president being bombed by the West and leader and his national interests aren't even taken into account. Yet here's Goodluck Jonathan. He's actually losing in the polls right now. His popularity is declining. He might even lose the next election that's coming up, which was postponed because of this campaign. But apparently, this shows that he is still a leader, and his views and the sovereignty of his country are still respected with the operation going on with his permission. So it says a lot. It says a lot that you have states that some people unfortunately have never heard of, like Cameroon, Niger. They respect international law, but states that everyone has heard of, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and Qatar, have no respect whatsoever for international law in the Mideast. And this is the big lesson that everybody can learn from what's happening in West Africa today. Now, the next one up on our countdown is Iraq and Iran's successful offensive against ISIL in Tikrit, which shows that it's entirely possible to beat back terrorism without any help whatsoever from the U.S. military. Now, guys, this is another really important story that also shows the war on terror is global, and globally, it does not need to have U.S. military intervention in order to succeed. Look at this. You have Iranian advisors helping Iraq liberate its country from ISIL terrorists. And right now, the first step in this battle is taking place in Tikrit. And by all accounts, it's been very, very successful. And now there were some naysayers that said, oh, it's going to lead to violence afterwards, reprisal killings, all this fear-mongering. But for what? I'll tell you for what. The United States and this anti-ISIL coalition, quote-unquote, is very upset that Iran is playing a very constructive role in Iraq in eliminating terrorism, because this goes against the message they've been saying for over 30 years that Iran is apparently a state sponsor of terrorism. Well, if it's a state sponsor of terrorism, why is it fighting against terrorism in Iraq? Why is it, provocatively enough, even more successful than the anti-ISIL coalition? In fact, that anti-ISIL coalition, under its bombing campaigns, we see that ISIL's territory has actually expanded. The only time it's contracted so far is when Iran got involved in the fight in pushing them back. What does that tell you? I'm not going to answer the question. I'm just rhetorically posing it to all the listeners. What's interesting here, too, is Iran and Iraq took the initiative on their own to begin this counter-offensive against ISIL in Tikrit because they wanted to, if you will, steal the initiative from the U.S. Now, why would that be? Isn't the U.S. supposed to be able to solve all the world's problems, or so many of us Americans are led to believe? Well, not necessarily, because there's been a lot of speculation and analysis that the U.S. might have wanted to, if you will, control the post-conflict settlement afterwards to its advantage. Now, what that means in basic English is this. The U.S. wanted to make sure that it can divide Iraq afterwards into 3 different states: a Sunni state, a Shia state, and a Kurdish state. But now those plans appear to be scuttled now that Iraq is regaining its sovereignty and Iran is helping it out. Third in our countdown is the U.S. bullying Vietnam into cutting its military ties with Russia. In a bewildering move that makes one wonder whether Washington realizes that it lost the Vietnam War in the first place over 30 years ago. So folks, here's an interesting story. It was revealed a couple days ago that U.S. Army commander, general in the Pacific, whatnot, has asked his Vietnamese counterparts to stop allowing Russia to use this Cam Ranh Bay facility in southern Vietnam to fly refueling planes over the Pacific to refuel bombers that have been flying around. Now, basically, this isn't going to work. I mean, this isn't going to work in terms of what the U.S. wants to do, because we all see what happened the last time the U.S. tried to bully Vietnam. Well, U.S. will was defeated. Now, there's not going to be another Vietnamese war or anything like that, guys. But this says a lot about Vietnam's importance in global affairs by the very fact that U.S. and Russia are both military interacting with it. Guys, we're in the middle of what many call a new Cold War, and any type of military cooperation with Russia is seen as a taboo. Yet, Vietnam is still doing it anyhow, showing that it's pursuing a multipolar policy. But on the other hand, despite its legacy of friendship with the Soviet Union and now Russia, Vietnam's also moving really close to the United States, which might sound surprising until you realize that both of them have the shared interest in containing China. Now, they're trying to both contain China. U.S. has actually eased its arms export restrictions on Vietnam. They're going to be sending them about 6 new patrol boats any week now. Well, the U.S. feels so comfortable with this new relationship, which is only just blossoming. It's not solidified yet, guys. This is just a trend in the works, that it wants to force Vietnam to make a choice. Do you want to work with Russia, have Russian economic cooperation, energy cooperation, and I need to remind everybody, Russia supplies a lot of Vietnam submarines, which are really important to it in a strategic sense, or are you going to work with the United States? Well, Vietnam would preferably like to work with both, to be honest, but now the U.S. is forcing it to make an uncomfortable choice. It sure sounds a lot like what was happening with Ukraine, but under completely different circumstances. But the trend that we see is this. U.S. is bullying countries to pick a side, and this might just come back to bite it in terms of its regional strategy in Southeast Asia. Our runner-up on the countdown is Jen Psaki and her psychic skills in sensing supposed Russian propaganda in a new film about Crimea, which hasn't been released, which she hasn't even seen yet. Guys, this is typical Paseka. This is one of the reasons why I love commenting on her, and so do millions of other people all across the world, because she's speaking without thinking. She's not putting any thought into what she's saying. She's acting as though she's guided by some type of gut feeling, but gut feeling based off of what? I mean, one can call her a talking head or a talking parrot, because I don't even think she comes up with these ideas on her own. Personally, I think someone's guiding her to say something, and she doesn't even realize how silly this stuff sounds, because you know what has happened with her? And I think that she really was the straw that broke the camel's back for many viewers across the world, because she showed that how the U.S. is engaging in diplomacy is actually a disgrace to the profession, because people like Jen Psaki should not be allowed to represent any country, no matter how one feels about the country, because it's really disrespectful to the entire field of diplomacy. Her quips and snarks have replaced substantial commentary, and it's made the State Department actually look like an international propaganda department for the United States. Guys, I know this is really harsh to say, but let's just think about this for a second. How can someone comment on a film they haven't even seen? She hasn't seen anything. she's read some reports here and there, maybe coming from Fox News and CNN, but since when does the media guide foreign policy? Well, actually, I'm not going to answer that. That's been going on for quite a while in some cases, but Jen Psaki, as much as I love her, shouldn't be allowed to open her mouth about things she hasn't seen. Now, if she has seen something and she wants to comment on it, as ridiculous as it is, yeah, hey, it's her right to talk about it. But to talk about something you haven't even seen just makes you look dumb, makes everybody listening to you sound pretty dumb, and it just distracts from what diplomacy is supposed to be. Diplomacy is supposed to be analytical, and it's supposed to be critical. It's supposed to get a message out there, and it's supposed to be interactive in a way. It's supposed to be a give and take. By just saying right away that this film is Russian propaganda and you haven't even seen it, it just makes me question, well, what other voices does she hear? What other ideas come into her head? What else is she going to talk about that she doesn't know anything about? Well, on April 1st, this is not an April Fool's joke, she's going to be getting a promotion and getting in charge of White House communications. So she'll be talking about a lot more, and I'll probably be commentating on her a lot more in the coming weeks. At our top spot, we've got a new study that says overvaluing kids can lead to narcissism, which sure sounds a lot like how overvaluing Americans can lead to exceptionalism. So guys, here's what's in the report. The report says that parents that are pampering their children and pampering them emotionally, making them seem like they're the best things in the whole world, more than likely end up with narcissistic, selfish children. Now, here's some details from the report. They say that parents that say or agree with the statement that my child is a great example for all other children to follow, or that their child is more special or deserving of something extra in life, start falling under these trends. Now, when you have other children who say that my father or mother lets me know he or she loves me, they're also more inclined to be narcissistic the higher they rank this. Now, what this means in terms of American exceptionalism is this. Looking at the parent comment, my child is a great example. Well, doesn't the U.S. say it's not just a great example, but the best example for every other country to follow? Doesn't the U.S. act and behave and actually specifically say it's more special than other countries because of its history, its democracy, its values, so on and so forth? And it doesn't say it's deserving of something extra in life, but it sure acts like it. If it can't get it by hook, it's going to do it by crook. And looking at the children, go back to the comment, my mother, father lets me know he or she loves me. Let's replace mother, father with media. Doesn't the media make every American feel like they're the best? They're on top of the world. The world is falling apart, but the U.S. is just this castle on a hill that's somehow safe from all the anarchy by virtue of its exceptionalism. Just think about that for a second. Now, if we look at this comparison which I'm trying to make, and it's the reason I put it at number one on our top spot, we really see that Americans are becoming more narcissistic because of their exceptionalism. Because of the way that Americans are made to feel compared to others across the world. Look what's going on in American media. Look at American sitcoms, TV shows, websites. There's a lot of mocking of other cultures, especially Russia, especially Muslims, especially, right now, it's also becoming Chinese. And throughout all of this, when the U.S. thinks it's more special, is people are going to act more narcissistic. Just like when a parent tells his kid it's the most special thing in the world, the kid turns out to be a narcissistic, sometimes, excuse the language, spoiled brat. So guys, this is everything that we have this week for Context Countdown. I'd like to warmly thank you very much for tuning in and listening to me, and I'll catch up with you guys next week to tell you the 5 hottest stories from the week. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.